Hello, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to this new session. So, it's a new week again, and we are back with more revision sessions. So, this week also, we are planning to continue with our MPPSC revision sessions, right? So, are you all ready? Yes, 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 yes. So, chalo then, let's get started. Please like the session, everyone. And now, let me share my screen with you all. Can you all see my screen? Yeah, tell me, is it visible to you all? Today, let's do a rapid revision. Okay, let's do a rapid revision. How does it sound? Does it sound fine? Yeah. So let's do a rapid revision. Okay, chalo. Here's your first question. What was the original professional name adopted by Rosie for her dancing career, as mentioned by Raju? So the first question is from the Guide by R.K. Narayan, published in 1958. Right. So here, what was the original name that was adopted by Rosie for her dancing career as managed by Raju? It is Nalini. It is Nalini. All right, clear? Chalo, next. When Raju is released from the central jail, at which specific location on the banks of the Sarayu River does he initially take shelter? Again, a very simple textual question it is. When Raju is released from the central jail, at which specific location on the banks of the Sarayu River does he initially take shelter? At an old dilapidated temple. At an old dilapidated temple. Talking about temple, tell me, the temple is a collection of religious poems by? The temple is a collection of religious poems by? The temple is a collection of religious poems by George Herbert. George Herbert. The temple is a collection of religious poems by George Herbert. He was a religious metaphysical poet. He was a religious metaphysical poet. All right. Yes. Next question. Which classical poetic form does Shelley employ for Ode to the West Wind? And how many sections comprise the entire poem? So I hope by now all of you have gone through this poem of Shelley, that is Ode to the West Wind. So in Ode to the West Wind, which poetic form has been employed and how many sections are there? Which poetic form has been employed and how many sections are there? Yes, it employs terza rima and this has 5 sections. 5 sections. Tell me who wrote works like Ode to a Nightingale, to Autumn, Ode on a Grecian Urn, Ode to Psyche. These are works by John Keats. John Keats, right? Okay, next. In Canto 3 of Ode to the West Wind, Shelley writes, the blue Mediterranean, where he lay, lulled by the coil of his crystalline streams, who awoke the Mediterranean from its summer dreams. In Ode to the West Wind, who or what woke the Mediterranean from its summer dreams? It is the Atlantic Ocean. The Atlantic Ocean. Okay. Who wrote the Black Atlantic. Who wrote the book The Black Atlantic? The Black Atlantic, it's a work by Paul Gilroy. Paul Gilroy. It is by Paul Gilroy. Correct. Next. In the opening chapter of The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain, we see that Huck reflects on his past. Which previous Mark Twain novel does Huck state he was the protagonist of? Tell me. Which previous Mark Twain novel does Huck state he was the protagonist of? The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Tell me, what was the real name of Mark Twain? What was the real name of Mark Twain? It is Samuel Langhorne Clemens. Samuel Langhorne Clemens. Right? Very good. Next. When Jim first encounters Huck on Jackson's Island, why does Jim initially react with extreme terror? Why does Jim initially react with extreme terror? Because he believes that Huck is a ghost. He thought that he had died. So he believes that Huck is a ghost. Right? Very good. Next. In the concluding section of the novel, A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, Stephen Dadulus articulates his aesthetic creed. He vows to live by silence, exile, and cunning. What does the term cunning primarily represent in this triad? So, A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, it's a novella or novel, yes, by James Joyce. It was published in 1916, right? So, towards the concluding section of this work, Stephen Dadulus articulates his aesthetic creed that he vows to live by silence, exile, and cunning. So, what do you mean by the term cunning here? Very good. It is strategic self-passioning and artistic independence. Strategic self-passioning and artistic independence. Tell me, who wrote the work Renaissance Self-Fashioning? Who wrote the work Renaissance Self-Fashioning? Who wrote the work Renaissance Self-Fashioning? It is by Stephen Greenblatt. Stephen Greenblatt. All right, next. In chapter 3 of A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man, Stephen's intense guilt drives him to attend a spiritual retreat. Who is the Jesuit preacher that delivers the terrifying and vivid sermons on the nature of hell? Who is the Jesuit preacher here that delivers the terrifying and vivid sermons on the nature of hell? It is Father Arnall. Father Arnall delivers a very terrifying and vivid sermons on the nature of hell in A Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. Tell me, which is a collection of short stories by James Joyce? Which is a collection of short stories by James Joyce? Tell me. Which is a collection of short stories by James Joyce? Dubliners. Dubliners is a collection of short stories by James Joyce. Right? Dubliners is a collection of short stories by James Joyce. Next. Which cultural and intellectual shift Popularized by Sir James Fraser's The Golden Bough, deeply influenced the mythical method used by high modernist writers to impose order on the chaos of the post-World War I era. It's a fantastic question, I feel. It's the best question of the session tonight. Which cultural and intellectual shift, popularized by Sir James Fraser's The Golden Bough, deeply influenced the mythical method that was used by high modernist writers like, say, James Joyce to impose order on the chaos of the post-World War I era? It is the revival of interest in primitive mythologies and fertility rituals. The revival of interest in primitive mythologies and fertility rituals, right? It happened through the book, The Golden Bough by Sir James Fraser. All right, yeah, B is correct. Next. Who coined the phrase, the pity of war, in the preface to his poems capturing the grim reality of trench warfare? So this phrase was coined by one of the war poets. One of the war poets. Who coined the phrase, the pity of war? He said, my subject is dash and the pity of war. It is Wilfred Owen. It is Wilfred Owen. He was a major war poet. He was very active during the World War One. World War One. He had also participated as a soldier during the war. He coined the phrase, the pity of war, in the preface to his poems to capture the grim reality of trench warfare. Do you think that Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf also talks about the horrors and the shock of war, specifically World War One? Do you think so? That Virginia Woolf's Mrs. Dalloway also talks about the horrors of war and its aftershock, the shell shock. Yeah. Do you think Mrs. Dalloway also talks about it? Yeah, right. Tell me, Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf, it's a circadian novel published in which year? Mrs. Dalloway, it's a circadian novel by Virginia Woolf published in 1925. 1925. Yes, in Mrs. Dalloway, Sir Septimus Warren Smith, he suffers from shell shock. He suffers from shell shock. And what happens to him towards the end of the novel? What happens to Sir Septimus Warren Smith towards the end of the novel? He commits suicide. He commits suicide. Can we see Sir Septimus Warren Smith as an alter ego of Mrs. Dalloway? Can we see Septimus Warren Smith as an alter ego of Clarissa Dalloway? Yes, we can. We can obviously see Sir Septimus Warren Smith as an alter ego of Mrs. Clarissa Dalloway. All right, clear? Right. Which Australian literary award did Happy Valley win in 1941, establishing Patrick White's early reputation despite his dissatisfaction with the work? So Happy Valley by Patrick White got which award? Happy Valley by Patrick White got which award? Happy Valley by Patrick White got the Australian Literature Society Gold Medal. The Australian Literature Society Gold Medal. All right. Okay. Next. What modernist literary influence is most prominently reflected in the stream of consciousness style of Patrick White's Happy Valley? What modernist literary influence is most prominently reflected in the stream of consciousness style of Patrick White's Happy Valley? Stream of consciousness. So, what does it reflect? Stream of consciousness. Stream of consciousness captures the continuous conscious thoughts of an individual, right? It reflects the psychological depth of Virginia Woolf. The psychological depth of Virginia Woolf. Because it's very easy. Stream of consciousness captures the continuous conscious thoughts of an individual. My continuous thoughts, my continuous conscious thoughts. That's what we mean by stream of consciousness technique. Easy. Okay. So, if you are planning to sit for the upcoming NET exam in December, and if you think you're weak in the paper 1, you can join our UGC NET paper 1 dedicated course, where we will help you to master all the 10 units of paper 1 with expert guidance. It's a 6-month structured program where you will get classes 3 days a week. Online learning is there, concept-based teaching, exam-oriented preparation. And it is designed for NET, SET, SLET aspirants, and very importantly, you will be provided with regular quizzes and practice sessions. Okay, so you can see the numbers on the screen. So if you want, you can join us. And do like the session, all of you, please. All right. Okay. Chalo. Let's move on to the next question, right? In the opening lines, the speaker states, I say it then, dearest, since it is so, since now at length my fate I know. What specific realization prompts this thought? It's a line from Browning's The Last Ride Together, right? What specific realization prompts this thought of the speaker? In Browning's The Last Ride Together. I said then, dearest, since it is so, since now at length my fate I know, since now at length my fate I know. Which realization prompted this thought of the speaker in Browning's The Last Ride Together? In Browning's The Last Ride Together. What does the speaker realize? He realizes that his beloved has completely rejected his romantic suit. He realizes that his beloved has completely rejected his romantic suit. In Browning's The Last Ride Together, in Browning's The Last Ride Together, the speaker says, I said then, dearest, since it is so, since now at length I know my fate. Okay, so option B is correct. So that's all from our side for tonight. I really hope you guys loved the session and enjoyed answering these questions. And we will be back again tomorrow at 9:30 exactly with more questions for MPPSC exam. All right. And if you want, you can always join our UGC NET Paper 1 dedicated course. All right. So take care then. Bye. Good night. And see you all again tomorrow at 9:30 p.m. Okay. And please do like the session, everyone. All right. Thank you so much. Good night.